You're listening to Shane Hall, the Dealmakers podcast, part of the House Cats podcast network, home to the Night Shift, Dealmakers, Open Floor, and more podcasts that aim to entertain and bring you stories worth telling. This week, we got an awesome lineup on our Dealmakers podcast, including interviews with Jason Gary of Maryland and MLS fame. So make sure you tune into that one. We just dropped that episode yesterday. Next week, we have Travis Gray coming on. He's an incredible deal maker with an awesome story, and we're excited to record that episode. So keep an eye out for that one. Later this week, we are going to kick off our Open Floor podcast and dive into some real estate topics and stories that are simmering in the local and national markets. This weekend, the Night Shift crew is meeting up. We're going to review Point Break. Keanu, Swayze. It's going to be an awesome podcast. Looking forward to reliving that movie with you guys. Today's episode, we're deep diving into one of the coolest, most thoughtful, and engaging agents that we have in our market. Kristi Neidhart has an awesome story. She's got an incredible background and such a calm, cool demeanor. We're just so thrilled to have her on the Dealmakers podcast and talk about her story and what separates her from the rest of the pack when it comes to deal making. Coming up, today's guest is a leader who blends high volume sales with high integrity service. She's built a brand rooted in relationships, team culture, and a deep commitment to community. She's the #1 team leader at Northrop Realty's Annapolis office, a longtime top producer in Maryland, and someone whose client-first philosophy has made her one of the most trusted names in the market. Kristi Neidhart didn't start in real estate. Her background spans in nonprofits and community building, but she's since helped nearly 700 families find home and purpose. So in this episode, we'll explore how Kristi scaled her business to $40 million annually, and what it takes to run a values-driven team and how environmental impact and client care drive her success. Let's get into it. Kristi, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit before the podcast. I like prequels. I like people's origin stories. So before we dive into some of the real estate stuff, I want to cover the origin story. So where'd you grow up?
Severna Park.
Were you
just
really?
10 minutes north of Annapolis.
Oh my
here
God.
In Maryland.
Okay. What was family life like?
My parents bought the house when I was 1. They're still in it.
Oh my God.
So it was good. It was went to local schools, public schools, and grew up on the water. So spent a lot of time on the dock as a kid, just enjoying the water and sailing and crabbing and all that has.
Where in Severna Park?
Manhattan Beach.
Okay, yeah.
Right on the border of Arnold and Severna Park. Like you look across the creek and it was Arnold, and we were on the Severna Park side.
That's awesome.
Dividing creek and up a big hill. So anytime we're going boating, my brother and I were the totes up and down. We were like the escalator for them, like all the heavy gear and drinks. And hey, we forgot this. Can you go run up and like, okay.
Yeah, you're the go.
So we're in good shape. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Was it just you and your brother, or do you have more siblings?
Just me and my brother. He's 2 years younger.
Okay.
Yeah, and we listen to music. Like I can verbatim remember the U2 Joshua Tree album. We would play it over and over again. The tapes, you listen to it at the end. You have to flip it out, put it back in, press play again.
Yep.
We did that for hours. So
people think because I'm young that I don't remember. I remember growing up with cassette tapes, and then it migrated to the CDs. And my parents, like all of our cars and stuff growing up, you could still plug in the tape deck, and like I was like, dude, this is like I understand that A side, B side, and it was so I feel you there.
Tapes back then too.
Exactly. But where'd you go to high school? Did you end up going to Severna Park?
Severna Park High School.
Okay.
Yeah. My mom taught at Broadnick. So my brother and I had the option to go to either school.
Yeah.
We're both like, do we want to go where our mom is teaching or we want to go somewhere else? So we were like, Severna Park.
That's it. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Were you guys into like extracurricular stuff there? Because Severna Park is big on it now.
It is, yeah. I was a nerd. So I played stand-up bass, the big one.
Hell yeah.
In the orchestra, and I did ballet. That was like my big two things. So I was a complete nerd. And my brother was percussionist. There were a lot of our house was the band house. Yeah. So my dad played stand-up bass too, and my brother's percussion. And they both thrive, and they still do it to this day, and they can play by ear, and they're just awesome.
That's so cool.
So everyone would come to our house because we also had a piano.
Yep.
So we had all the heavy equipment, so they would come and jam in the basement.
That's so awesome.
So that was a lot of growing up, was a lot of music. And I tried playing the bass, but I always needed sheet music, and I enjoyed it, but it was just not my thing. So I could express myself through music that way.
Yeah, dance is cool. Do you still dance?
Just for fun, just in my living room.
Yeah,
making breakfast, just kind of dancing. So.
Well, my kids are big into the ballet stuff right now. And they're younger. They're 7, 4. My 2-year-old, who the hell knows what he's going to be doing. But my guess is something in sports, because it's like having a lab in the house.
Yeah.
He is constantly moving and running around doing stuff. And so he's interesting. But I get the artsy side from my girls. My girls absolutely love all of that stuff. Sports are, they're kind of feeling it out, seeing if it's something that they enjoy doing. But I always like learning what people are interested in, especially growing up, because most people that get into this business are not interested in it when they're young. It's not like, I didn't grow up thinking I was going to be a realtor. So
same.
Exactly. So what was your dreams growing up?
I thought I was going to teach wilderness therapy to high school kids out camping.
No kidding.
So I got a degree in environmental resource management from Virginia Tech.
Okay.
And I thought I was going to go back for my master's in education.
Yep.
And then take kids out camping, and just from the inner city. Like, I just thought that was, because I connected, that changed my world. It was like being out in the wilderness and being out in backpacking and hiking, and totally different scenes. So I just thought that was going to be my pathway, and then it wasn't.
No. Yeah. So, that kind of stuff is so cool, though. Like, it's something that I didn't do enough of as a kid, and something as I'm getting older, I want to do a lot more of, because we're so connected to these devices and stuff all the time that it just feels like that seems like a necessary way to disconnect and just get back to
get out and hike.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know that's so cool. So what was life at Tech like? We got a few Hokies in our life.
I know. I loved it. I haven't been back, which is weird, right? But because most people are like diehard Hokies.
Oh yeah.
And it was mostly because I missed the water. So I felt landlocked, and it was a little landlocked for me. But I loved dorm life. Like, I would go mudsliding. So there were lots of rainstorms. I was in the girls' dorm, and across was the boys' dorm. And in between, there was this big field, and right next to the basketball arena. And we would just go out mudsliding and then go back in and track mud through the hallways and get in big trouble for getting to the showers and things. But it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. It was a good time.
Tech is a cool place, man. Blacksburg is kind of like in the middle of nowhere.
It is.
It really is.
Strictly college town when I was there. Yeah.
Still is. I don't think much has changed. I mean, JMU is close enough. Did you guys ever go out to other colleges and stuff?
Yes, we go to Radford. I had two friends who went to Radford, which is just 20 minutes away. And I had 10 people pile into my VW Bug convertible once. We're like, how many people can we fit in here? And there's one person in the frunk, because that was the only car that had a frunk. So it was fun times. But we went to UVA a lot. I had another friend who had good friends at UVA. And anytime I passed James Madison driving to school, I was like, if I went here, I would be at school. There was another 3-hour drive past that. So I was a little envious, but it was good.
Yeah.
Up and down the corridor of 81.
It's a pretty scenic drive. I just did it last week. A lot of sheep out there, a lot of cows out there.
This is true.
It's
moo cows.
100%. So you graduate Tech, and then what do you do right after that?
I got into AmeriCorps.
Okay.
So it was like a domestic version of the Peace Corps in the United States. So I did that for 2 years. I was running a volunteer center I was doing a volunteer program for Chesapeake Children's Museum, which is still around to this day.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Debbie Wood was my first real boss, and absolutely still love her, adore her to this day. And so I created their volunteer program.
Okay.
And that was it was called Volunteer Maryland. So we created volunteer programs for different nonprofits all over the state. And then the second year I was asked to stay on in a leadership role and oversee other folks creating volunteer programs around. So I did like a women's shelter, after school program, Habitat for Humanity spots. So just lots of different nonprofits.
That's really cool.
And I fell in love with that. And I found this innovative volunteer center called Hands on Baltimore. So I went straight into that right out of AmeriCorps and did their volunteer programs. So they were in Baltimore City, and we had a menu for each month we put up. We'd have these folks who would lead volunteer projects that we would train, and you could pick from any, if you're a young person in the city, you're like, I want to give back, I don't know what to do. We had this whole menu for you. So it was after school programs, building houses, homeless shelters, like you name it, you wanted to do it, we would plug you in. And so I did that for 6 years.
Okay.
And then I got bored because it was small, and I was like ambitious, and I was like, worked my way up in that nonprofit. And then I said, I want to go to New York Cares, which is the biggest city cares organization, which Hands on Baltimore is a part of. So I went up there to do grant fundraising for them. And it was like, I had to raise $1 million in grants in a year, which is like, totally seemed impossible to me. It's like, holy cow, that's a lot of money, especially for me in like early 20s. Yeah. Making $40,000 a year at nonprofits. Right?
Like, how am I going to pitch that?
How am I going to do that?
Oh my gosh.
But I'd done a lot of fundraising for Hands on Baltimore too. So a little bit under my belt, but I went up there with an air mattress and a suitcase on Sunday night. Monday was my first day at work, and Tuesday was 9/11.
Oh my god!
So I was right by Union Square, 16th and Union Square, and anyway, so that changed me. That's where the origin story where it begins, if you will. And after AmeriCorps, I never went back to get my master's. I went back and tried school, and it just wasn't for me. But I love the nonprofit sector. I just fell in love with it. So that's kind of the trajectory that I took.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. What kind of drew you into that? Have you always been interested in giving back and helping others?
For whatever reason, yes. Yeah. Even as a kid, I was like, if I had 2 coats, I wanted to give one away to someone who didn't have one. It just is my nature. It's just, I don't know. It just came out that way.
That's really cool. That's like a sweet soul. Yeah. Do you think that's something that your parents instilled in you, or is it something you were kind of born with?
They were big on volunteerism and giving back, but I think not to that extreme. They're focused on the environmental world, which is where I got my environmental passion, for sure. Yeah,
the environmental space is super interesting. Are you still active in it?
Mm-hmm. Very active. In fact, we just hosted an Earth Day event and made the front page of the Capitol.
No kidding.
So we did a free shredding event where we recycled the shredded paper through EcoCycle. Was the shredding, or EcoShred was the name of the company that did that for us. And we collected books for International Goodwill. Bikes for a place out in Frederick that ships them internationally. SPCA, we collected towels and pet food and leashes and things like that, and eyeglasses and hearing aids. And
that's cool.
So we wanted, if you're going to do spring cleaning and you want to get rid of stuff, why not set up a one-stop shop where instead of things going to landfill, we could get them to people who would need them or recycle or reuse. Yeah,
so, that's awesome. So how did you end up getting into real estate?
Backwards.
Yeah.
So after 9/11, when that happened, that was super intense because our nonprofit was one of 4 that oversaw Ground Zero. So we were in charge of the volunteers there. And it rocked my world, as it did everybody. You know, everyone has a changing of heart story around 9/11.
1,000%.
Yeah. So I knew basically no one in the city, and I stayed and I fulfilled my commitment. I raised $1 million.
Yeah.
Mostly a fourth of that was a tribute to Jimmy Buffett. I'm a huge fan of his.
No kidding.
His foundation called Singing for Change Foundation had funded $10,000 grant for Hands on Baltimore when I was there. And I got to know their folks through the foundation there. So I reached out to them and they said, hey, we're planning this benefit concert and we know you and we would love to, we're going to split it 4 ways. We're going to raise $1 million and split it between 4 nonprofits. And we'd love for you to apply. So I applied, we won.
No kidding.
And got that. So that helped me leave earlier than I thought. So after the closing ceremony of Ground Zero, I was able to leave and come back home and figure out what the heck I was going to do with my life.
Well, how long were you in New York then?
9 months.
9 months, jeez.
Yeah. From 9/11 to closing ceremony.
Probably the most tumultuous 9 months that New York has had.
Yeah, it was something. I can remember leaving the office that day because everyone had to walk home because they shut down all the public transportation.
Yeah.
And walking past people with dust on them, all over their clothes because we were a mile away from ground zero. That's where the office was. And my home was 4 miles north in upper East Harlem.
Yeah.
So I had to walk back. But I can remember vendors coming out and just putting out water for free for everybody. And like the whole city pitched in and was amazing in their giving and how they came alive. And everyone wanted to volunteer in ground zero. And we didn't have enough things for them to do. And the liability was so high.
Oh, yeah.
So we did like blood drives and just things that people could do to give back in some way.
Yeah.
But that was super intense. And I burned out. I said, you know what, instead of begging for money for nonprofits, which it felt like a chore.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing. I said, I want to make enough money where I can give back to the things I care about, make a difference that way. So I got to figure that out. What am I going to do? So I came back to Maryland, just like, I want to be close to family again. I don't want to move away. I understand now how important that is. So I've been here ever since. And I said, I taught kickboxing for a year till I figured things out.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So, because I'd done that previously anyway, so it just seemed like a good outlet. And then I said, well, maybe I want to try, because real estate, it's so easy to get your license.
Yeah.
Right? It's still too easy, I think. And
it is.
I have opinions about that, but anyway. And,
as do I.
And I said, well, maybe I can flip houses, right? So I get my license, I'll get the inside track on places, and I've got all these nonprofit connections so I can get contractors cheap and everything else. But I had no savings, right? I was coming out from $40,000 a year salary with, debt.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
How was I going to fund a project like this? So I got my license, and it was Champion Realty was around at the time. It's not around anymore.
Yep.
And they said, you have to sit desk duty. And I was like, I don't want to sit desk duty. I want to flip houses.
Exactly.
So I reluctantly sat up there one Saturday. I remember this. And this woman came in the front door, which I think happens very rarely. She walked in, she said, I want to buy this house. I already know what it is, and I want you to help me. And I was like, okay, I guess I have to do this. So her backstory was she had twin daughters. One had terminal cancer and one was healthy.
Oh, man.
And she wanted them to live in a place where it was serene, where they could look at the water and just enjoy life, right? Just, pause and do that. And so she found this place, overlooked the Severn. It's called Rio Lane.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a walking path to it, not even a driveway. So you had to walk down the hill, walk across the path to the middle of the hill, but overlooking the Severn. It was like this little cabin of a house, right? Wow. But it was perfect for them. And I realized it was like law, because I had to learn about the contracts. It was marketing. It was a lot of psychology, a lot of hand-holding, a lot of fulfilling people's dreams and helping make things happen. And I fell in love with it. I was like, this is amazing. I made such a difference in this person's life. I didn't know you could do that through real estate, right? So it's just like eye-opening. And so 2 years later, here I am.
Golly. I tell it to people all the time, because they're like, I tell them, if you put real estate on a resume, you're not going to get anybody's interest.
Right.
Like, they're going to be like, okay, cool, you sold houses. Ooh. But
everyone does that.
Exactly, because they think it's super easy.
Right.
And I get it. Like, sometimes it can be, but
every once in a while,
there are so many different aspects to a deal, and there's so many different aspects to running that kind of business. Right. You have a lead generation component of it. Like, how am I relationship building? How am I getting my name out there to make sure that people know that I'm available to them if they want to make a life change?
That they remember you in that moment.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then you have the service component. Like, all right, how can I connect with the people that are willing to work with me? And how do I get them from A to B? And that's, we got to do 15 different things. I got to make sure that my connections in the other spaces of real estate beyond just agency are lined up, and that they're going to be able to get these people. So I got the lending component, the title component, inspections, contractors. There's a million different things. And then you have like the contract piece. None of us are attorneys. Right. And these are contracts written by attorneys, and we have to study them to make sure that we know what we're doing, so that we don't mess something up, so that they are in, dire straits because we forgot to dot an I or cross a T in a contract. And it's incredibly challenging. And then on top of all of that, you have the psychological component to it, which
is half of it.
Is seriously. I mean, many times I feel like a psychiatrist, and sometimes, I mean, every agent that's been in it long enough has stories where they've had clients get far too personal with what's going on in their life. And sometimes it's great. And you feel some commonalities like, oh my gosh. And it can be eye-opening. Like, gosh, people are actually going through this, that, and the other. And I never really thought about that, but maybe you can use that experience when you have another client that is going through something similar and be like, hey, I've actually dealt with something like this before. And here's what we did. But there's so many different avenues that you can go with in real estate, and they get completely undermined by the general public in most cases, because they're like, I can throw a rock and hit a real estate agent right now. So it can't be that hard. And it's like, well, it's not that hard to get into it, but to do it well is hard because there are so many different aspects of it that people don't account for. And dealing with people is probably the most challenging, but your experience in nonprofit is probably pretty good for dealing with challenging situations, I would assume.
Yes.
Yeah. So was that was the first deal that you had, was the Rio Lane one?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So how do you follow up on that?
I don't know. But I knew that when it could be that way, that would be amazing. Yeah. And I actually got into the business because I thought real estate would be okay, because Jean Andrews, I don't know if you know her. Yep. She was like the agent when I was growing up. Oh yeah. And she was my parents' agent, and my parents for a long time thought they were going to move and never moved. So she literally took them to see, I would say, hundreds of houses over a span of 10 years. They never moved. They're still in the same house.
Yes.
Right? So,
yes.
But she was so patient with them and educative and just amazing with them. Right. And I think the psychology part was a lot of it. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Just like, making sure it was the right thing for them or not. And I was like, if real estate could be done that way, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe it's not the used car salesman that I thought it was way back when. And it's still, Jean's a mentor to me still to this day. So
that's really cool. Oh, she's still out there doing stuff.
Is,
and she's doing really well.
Yeah.
But I always am attracted to the agents that handle things professionally and with grace, and they have some kind of like human level to it, where they don't like, clearly it's a business, but they don't operate like some cutthroat stuff that you see on television, because that's not really how it should be. And it's not really how it
doesn't have to be that way. Right?
Exactly.
So to have a team-based culture, if you will, with agents are my favorite transactions for sure, with the agent side, because you can do that and still stand up for your client and still do best by them.
Yes.
And be collaborative and brainstorm ideas of how to make the best solution for everybody.
Exactly.
Right? Where everyone's winning instead of one person's dominating, the other person feels horrible. As soon as you fall out of love, and Jean taught me this, that's when people start to look for outs, and they look at the contract intensely and so forth. So if you can keep that from happening and keep everyone moving forward, as long as you're representing them in the best way possible, that to me is a secret sauce of being really good in this business.
Totally agree.
You're that same way. And we've done several transactions together and really enjoyed them.
Yeah. So, well, I feel like that's the best way to do it. When somebody comes to you and they say they want something and they have a goal in mind, then, okay, great. Well, let's see how we can do that. And you don't have to be combative in order to get to that place. It can be something that works for everybody. Yeah. And I mean, the name of this podcast is Dealmakers, because I like making deals. And there is like, I do kind of waffle sometimes on, we have a fiduciary responsibility, right? We have to represent the clients in the best way possible. But at the same time, we have to eat as well. We have to run a business and make sure that we have our bills paid too. So how do you balance that? Sometimes it's difficult, because you'll get clients that are, like you said, they've fallen out of love, or they're falling out of, maybe not with the house, but maybe with the process. And then they start getting overly stressed and looking for outs, and one way or another. And the smallest thing becomes this mountain that seems insurmountable to them. And it can be hard to navigate those. But as long as you can, and not everybody can do this well, and I'm guilty. Sometimes I fail at it, but if you can reset And so it's like, well, what's the whole purpose of this? I mean, we just had this conversation with a client yesterday who was like, we want to move to Davidsonville. We have to have the schools. We have to have this big house and stuff. And so they put an offer in that's not what the seller wanted. Right. And I'm like, well, you're competing with like 4 other people that want the house just as bad as you do, but maybe more so because they're giving her what she wants on price. And if that, it's hard, right? Especially in a market like this, it's hard sometimes where inventory is very tight and everybody feels like they're compromising on something. It's like, if a house checks 8 out of 10 boxes, is that good enough for you to put all your chips in that basket? Right. Or do you need the pain of missing out on those in order to hope that we find something that might be a 10 out of 10, but it's really hard right now to find a 10 out of 10. So there's been several conversations with clients lately that have been like, calm down. Everything is okay. We will get there when we get there. And I'm not a pushy type though. I don't push people to do one thing or another. I take an advisory role and I'm very supportive of whatever their goals are. And I can help you get what you want, but it'll ultimately come down to motivation. Like how badly do you want this? And then I can tell you what you have to do to get that. And this is, what you're up against and here's how we can get it. But at the same time, like, you got to assume like other agents are out there doing the same thing. And they're saying, well,
I'll share one of my differential things with you.
Go ahead.
So I do open houses for every listing.
That's nice.
The reason why I do them is different from most people. It's not to generate leads in general. It's more so that there's a time. I usually do them on Sundays. Because if you have competition, we put houses on the market on Thursday. Let them go through the weekend. So a lot of showings. These are just for really hot properties where it's competitive. Right. So there's just the secret sauce for that. I'll do the open house on Sunday from 1 to 3, get to go to church and then come back. Right?
Yep.
I do that because I want the people who only spent half an hour in the house had to make the biggest life decision they've ever had to make in a short period of time and go for everything, put in over list price, waive inspections, like all these crazy things that we don't wish on our buyers, but they're doing because if you don't win in this market a lot of times. So I want to have the house open so they can come back through again with or without their agent, just for a second look, just to solidify that that's the house they want. When I started doing that, our fallout rate dropped tremendously. Because before you see across the industry when people do this, about a third of the homes, the contracts fall apart. They come back on the market. And that does not serve the seller well. Because you come back on the market, you're going to be below list price almost all the time. It's just statistically, it's horrible for you. Exactly. So you try to avoid that. So that's why I do open houses.
That's a really smart and thoughtful way to do it because you're totally right. 'Cause especially in a market like this, like I got into this in 2013. You used to be able to go to a house 2, 3, 4 times in some cases over like a week or 2 and be like, okay, I think I can see ourselves.
Bring your parents, check in, get their feedback.
You had the time to do all that stuff and now you don't. And I mean, we get the notifications all the time from agents like, hey, it went on the market on Thursday evening, we have a deadline. And it's like, well, how can I possibly get my people there and write an offer that they're going to feel comfortable with after seeing it for 15 minutes?
Right.
And it's like, all right. Because then if they get it, which at this point it's rare if you look at our numbers, but if they do get it, then it's like, are we making the right decision? Exactly. And they're constantly questioning that because you don't have the time to process all that stuff. So that's really thoughtful. I love that methodology. You obviously have grown a lot from the first deal to now.
A little bit.
Quite a bit. How do you think you did it? I mean, if you had to go back and look, what's the, how do you blueprint that?
I think it's, philosophy of if you give people what they want, you in turn that wheel of generosity comes back to you. Right. So since my 3rd year in the business, I haven't, knock on wood, had to worry about, except for 2009 when the market crashed. Right. I haven't had to worry about paying my mortgage or trying to make a deal go through because I have bills to pay. Right. So I've always had this and I think I praise the Lord above for that. Always had that for me. And I think it's just because I focus on them as opposed to focusing on myself.
Yes.
And I network a lot, and I'm a connector by trade. So when I meet somebody and I know that they would benefit by knowing someone, or they could do more deals together outside of my industry, but just the two of them, I connect them, and they remember that. Like, that's that circle of generosity again. So then who are they going to think of when they think real estate, right? So I do this gratitude happy hour once a quarter with all my business providers. That's part of this. And we send it out to about 50 folks whether it's a landscaper or the guy who repairs the windows, or title company lenders are easy, right? Easy ones, financial planner, estate attorney, like all these people, pull them together, house cleaner, just so many things that industries that we tangent with, and pull them together and say, hey, about 12 to 20 of them will show up at any given time for happy hour. We'll just say, hey, go around the circle and say who everybody is. And I'll say, this is so-and-so, this is what they've done for me, what they mean to me, and the quality of their business. I give a little validation. And then I say, and you need to meet so-and-so across the table, because I think you guys would really connect and maybe be able to help each other with your own businesses. Right.
That's
so
cool.
I do that once a quarter. And that group has consistently been like 8 to 10 million a year in business for me. So that pays my mortgage right there. Yeah. Right. And then all the other ancillary things that we do and networks that I'm in and other things built on top of that. So networking and connecting is how I don't worry about money.
Do you think the nonprofit stuff helped with that? Because it kind of early on got your feet wet with reaching out and meeting people and the fundraising aspect of it?
Probably. Yeah. Focusing on the people.
That's a great way to build a business, though, to connect people. 'Cause you're right. They totally remember you, and you're the reason that they got what they got.
Right.
What do you think about the state of the market right now?
People ask me, how's the market? And I always say it's emotional and it's weird.
It is.
And I think that captures it. So anytime there's a shift in markets, things don't make sense. So some things that you think a house you put on the market or a buyer that you're working with, you think the house will go right away for competitive offers. It has in the past to be a slam dunk, right? Yep. It'll sit. You're like, what is going on? And then one that you thought would never sell sells in an instant, right? And so you have this weird dichotomy of things going on. That's when things are shifting. And I think the higher end, we're seeing that a lot more right now, because people whose net worth and is tied to the stock market, it's a little wonky. Now, right? So it's going all over the place, ping-ponging, bouncing. About 70% of the population craves stability. So when you rock their stability, they tend to just pull back and say, let me just take a pause. Let me just see where this lands, and then I can make my life decisions again. So I think that's part of, there's some people who have to move, so it's causing some things to move right away.
Right.
And other people are taking a pause, especially that 800 and above price point, especially in the multi-millions. I think we're seeing more and more of that sit than otherwise. You still have a conglomerate of first-time home buyers that you still have enough buyers and not enough listings where that hasn't really affected that as much. So we're seeing those fly off the handle still. So, but these are shifts, and that's what makes it emotional and weird.
I got to say, I second that. That's seeing the same thing on our end with it's particularly the last 3 months. It's just, it's been, and it's hard to educate clients on that, because it's like, these are a lot of things that are out of our control.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what the impact is going to be long term, but I can tell you, like, what's happening on a day-to-day basis. I can't really predict what's going to happen next week at this point, because there's 10 news stories an hour that come out that are like, well, this is shifting and this is happening. And then it's, well, now construction costs has gone up because of tariffs and all this. And you're like, I don't know. I just know that if this is the house that you want, and sometimes I have to like dumb it down and focus only on the day-to-day stuff, because it's too hard to predict at this point, like what the future is going to be.
Yeah. But it's also opportunity, right? So there's less people buying at that time.
Yes.
It's a great opportunity for buyers, especially in the higher end, because they can take advantage of less competition.
Yep.
So, it's always that when people are in fear, that's when opportunities arise.
True.
So
very true. Yeah. I haven't had a lot of people push back on rates lately. I think there's been a lot of, not necessarily like reassurance, but just, or comfort level, but they've just kind of settled in at this point.
Because they're stable. That's the one thing that's stable right now is the interest rates.
Exactly.
Upper 6s to low 7s, ping-ponging back and forth in that little range.
It's the only thing really that's been stable.
True.
Are you seeing different buyer behavior in the luxury space over the last 18 months than we've seen prior? I mean, it's not COVID anymore where things are like, I will give you my firstborn. I will. We're not seeing quite that.
No. I think, what I just described about the stock market is kind of causing people to take a pause at the moment. Prior to that, we've seen a lot of luxury, COVID and since transact that hasn't in the past, like much higher percentage. I think what we're looking at in the upcoming 6 months to a year is folks who had high net worth jobs in DC who got laid off or are they're business contractors and tied to government contracts. A lot of those are also let go or things are shifting there. So I think we're going to see folks who were plus they have to go back to their offices now, a lot of them, where they didn't have to before. So during COVID, I'm sure you experienced this too. People were like, well, I have this $1 million condo in DC, or I could move out to Annapolis, look at the water for $1 million and a single family home or $1.5 million, right? And a decent house with a dock and the waterfront lifestyle. Instead of being in DC, and I don't have to commute anymore. So this is going to be awesome. Well, now they have to commute again. So we may see more waterfront opportunity coming up over the next 6 months to 18 months. And I also had folks reach out to me and they said, hey, we hear foreclosures are coming. I was like, well, the foreclosure process takes at least a year, and it's going to take a while for folks to, when they do lose their job or have to transfer, do something different, for all that to shake out. So I'm like, that may be the case in a year to a year and a half from now or 2 years from now, but probably not right now. Yeah. So make your decision based on what's in front of you, or, wait the 2 years. But in 2 years, the house you wanted may be worth $100,000 more. Exactly. And then you're, so. And you might be right back at square one. Yeah.
I've had some other people talk about the potential for foreclosure and stuff. I don't think that we've seen it that much, but the ones, I have a couple of people that are interested in flipping and stuff like that, and they go to the auctions at the courthouse and stuff.
Right.
I would say 90+% of the time, the bank just buys it back.
Correct.
And then it's, all right, well, what do we do now?
Yeah.
Should we reach out to the attorney? They're not going to do anything with you. Right. They don't know you. And so, I don't know that's, we'll see where that ends up going. But I'm curious what your take is on the NAR settlement and the commission stuff, because that's been a big discussion over the last, 8 months or whatever.
Yeah.
And I have no issues with discussing it with clients or anything like that. 95% of the time they see the value and they're like, yeah, I've always paid X percent or whatever. And I get it. And so, does it mean I heard somewhere or I read an article where I don't have to pay a commission anymore? What is that about?
Right.
And so I don't know if you've had any experience with clients.
Oh yeah. I proactively bring it up because it's out there. Right.
Yeah.
So it's best to just do that, in my opinion. So I always tell people the lawsuit was about decoupling.
Right.
So instead of a seller pre-agreeing to pay both commissions in advance and advertising that as part of their marketing, now it's been decoupled. So now we're going to negotiate and talk about my commission only, so that half of it, and then understand that the buyer's agent is also going to need to be paid. And sometimes we'll see that come through in an offer, and sometimes we won't, or reduced or whatever. So they're going to negotiate with the contract that commission.
Yep.
We should expect that to be half of or double what I'm charging you. Yep. So that's kind of the number that typically comes through. And so I always say it's based on the net number to you. So no matter how it comes in, if the buyer's agent's not charging commission, their offer is probably going to be less, right? So it's really, it washes out the numbers. So when I present things to you, I'm going to present them as apples to apples. So if this one doesn't take a commission, it's the equivalent of this to the next one, right? So we can make a decision based on net number to you, as opposed to sales price and no commission or reduced commission, right?
Yep.
So as long as you don't have an ego about commission, we're going to look at the net number. And I don't say ego to them, right?
Yeah,
but between us, that's sometimes what it is.
Sometimes that is
because they've been told they don't have to pay commission. You don't have to. It's decoupled. but it's going to come through as part of one of the terms of the contract that we're receiving for buyers.
Yeah. Well, I put a pretty similar argument out there, and I like to get out ahead of it too, because inevitably I know it's going to be a question that comes up.
Right.
But I say, look, like, you can sell your house yourself. You can buy a house yourself. It's not usually recommended, but you don't need an agent or a broker to do the stuff for you. Let's put it in another term. If you have experience in building and you know exactly what you're doing, you could build your own house, and you can go out and get the permits, and you can get the supplies, and you can do the labor. But if you don't have that time, the money, or the experience in doing that, you hire somebody to do that. That's the same thing here. You just have to think of us like a contractor. It's basically what we are.
Right. We're an investment. So they're investing in us, both sellers and buyers, to get them the best representation.
Exactly.
The best deal in the end. So,
exactly. And so most of the time, if I put it that way, they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't want to do any of that stuff. So, we'll leave that up to you. And I get it. And it's a lot. And depending on the price point too, it's a good amount of money. I'm like, I know, but look at all of your neighbors, and I can tell you exactly what they've paid for the same services from either me or another agent. And they're not all agents are equal, as we've found out over experience. But at the same time, like, sometimes it's a necessary evil if you don't have the time or budget to do stuff yourself, like any other contracting business.
Can I share? I do think it helps to provide understanding of value of agents and to be more selective about your agent.
Yes.
On the buyer side, right? They've always, in my opinion, been selective about listing agent. Like, I'll often be one of 3 that they're interviewing. Right. If I don't know them directly. But buyers will sometimes show up at an open house and say, or call a listing on Zillow or Redfin and say, okay, I'll meet you at this house. And they don't know that that's who they're hiring really to represent them at the moment.
No idea.
With no interview, right? And no process. So I think decoupling has helped our clients realize that it is important to understand, how do you negotiate? How do you represent me? What are the pros of working with you as opposed to not working with anyone or someone else, right? So
that's something that I've tried to institute with our group is like, if we have a buyer that's interested in going out and seeing stuff and they're not really sure who they want to work with, or they think they might want to work with us, that's great. Yeah. Let's sit down at our office or coffee shop or something and actually like go through the process and get to understand their goals better. I don't want our first meeting to be like, oh, you want to go and see this house? Okay, fine. I'll meet you out there in an hour. It's like,
you're transactional at that point. Not relational.
Exactly. You haven't built any value at all doing that, other than this guy knows how to open a door. So that's wonderful. And he picks up a phone, which yes, there is some value in that, but it's hard for a buyer to justify what they might be paying you or what you might be collecting from the seller, depending on what you negotiate for that service. We try to do consultations anytime that we can on, if we're bringing on a new buyer, I want to know exactly what they want and I identify their goals, their timing, all the stuff, so that they feel like, oh, A, I'm being heard, B, they've demonstrated market knowledge, and C, we've started having a lot more people call us that are interviewing buyer agents in the last, 2 months, which is good. I think it's a great step forward for the average consumer to be like, hey, we should really pay attention to who's representing us.
Totally agree.
What they bring to the table. So I've been pleasantly surprised by that. How do you stay sharp with all the changes in the litigation stuff that comes out and the new practices that that we have, the technology, the policies, all that stuff? What's your best way? Because it can be mind-blowing sometimes, keeping up with all of it.
Being learning based and always having a coach. Totally believe in both of those. So always pushing and trying to find. So just recently, social media is picking up for all of us. That's part why we're here. Who's the best social media person in real estate that you can think of out in any market?
In any market.
Who you see the most?
There's a guy in DC who I'm friends with that it depends on what kind of content you're talking about.
Okay.
But in terms of professional content that looks like it's been crafted by Condé and Nast. It's Daniel Hyder.
Okay.
He does exceptional video work and social content. I always look at his stuff and I'm totally blown away with just the level of it. I mean, he had a Easter post that wasn't a simple Happy Easter. It was a true, like almost a small movie, a short film.
Yeah.
That was, I assume he hired a child actor, goes through one of the listings that they have, and he does like a ton of high-end stuff in DC. Right. And I met him when I was working at Sotheby's a few years ago. And he does most of his focus in this ultra luxury high-end space in DC and Northern Virginia. And it's everything that he does tells a story. It's super engaging. I think he's still like the #1 TikTok followed real estate brand out there. And I'm on TikTok, but I'd never scroll through it because I'm like, I'm going to lose an hour of my time if I open that app up. So no, thank you. But it's like he has this listing that honestly looks like the White House. And he's got this kid who's probably 5 or 6 years old, walking around this property, touring the grounds, looking for Easter eggs. And
Brilliant.
He's picking up these Easter eggs. He's looking around, and then he's going through the house, finding other Easter eggs. And so the whole time you're watching this kid go around, but at the same time, you're also seeing this awesome house while you're at it, but you're not totally focused on the house. You're kind of focused on what this kid's doing. And then you see like in one of the foregrounds, you see like 2 bunny ears pop up from behind a bush. It is really cute.
Yeah.
And then you get the Happy Easter thing when it all wraps up. But it's maybe a minute long, but it's like almost everything he does tells a story and has some kind of narrative beyond, look at this amazing house. It is saying that, but it's also got something else with it. Now he goes like overboard on hiring actors and bringing in luxury vehicles for every listing. Like it's way over the top, but it's like that in terms of like professional production, that's the best that I've seen. But there's also other agents that their content is more, much more informational about either the market or the process or the area that they live in, and highlighting, this is why you got to live in this area. This is what draws people to it. And there was one I saw yesterday, some agent, I think in, I don't know if it was Sarasota or somewhere in Florida. And they, not a professional production the way that Daniel does his, but it's showing a bunch of kids running around in the playground of basically this house that they are selling. And it's like, if you lived here, this is what life would be like. And there's like 15 kids sprinting around and using the entire house as a playground. But that kind of stuff is always attractive to me because I don't do that. I do the podcast. Yay for me. It's my fun way to get stuff out there on social, but I do find like there's so many different avenues that you can take on social beyond just look at this pretty house, because I think that stuff is cool, but doesn't really attract every single buyer to it. It's like, all right, cool. I know you're in real estate. Next. And they continue swiping. But I like the informational stuff that tells you about lifestyle, tells you about a neighborhood specifically, or why people are drawn to a certain location. I like backstories. If there's like a really cool historic house or something that's just like, oh, did you know that Oprah owned this house? Like something like that. It's like, okay, you've got my attention. I'm interested.
Well, in Annapolis, it's Thomas Jefferson or someone else, right? So it's a historical figure, and
exactly
a lot of that.
Exactly. Yeah. So who do you follow that you like?
So this is going back probably 2 years. Ryan Serhant. Was like number one social media guy that I paid attention to, and he started coaching. So I was one of the first 500 students
That's
them.
cool.
So I've been to a bunch of things with them. But his secret sauce, he said, people like to go shopping with friends.
Yes.
So if they feel like they know you through your social media, that's the secret sauce. So then they already know what's going on in your life. They know your personality. They know how you're going to represent them.
Yep.
They've already picked you. You just have to show up. And then
that's so true.
Right. And so what you're doing here with podcasts is just exactly that. Like people are getting to know you just by talking with me, what your values are.
Yeah.
Right. So, and how you negotiate and how you represent buyers and how you care about that.
Yep.
That's huge. So you're doing it.
No, I love that because I love Sirhan. I think his stuff is so engaging. He's great in front of a camera too.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
that's his passion, right?
Yes.
He always wanted to be an actor. So he is in his element.
Yes. He is in his element at all times, but he's done something with his brokerage that I think is really cool and super unique. He's taken that passion that he has for real estate and acting and then kind of he's created his own like TV shows off of it. Some of them are on Netflix and Bravo, but he's also got shows that are like just like on his website. It's through his media arm of his company, but it'll be like this show is listed and he has his different agents take him on tours through their cool penthouse properties, whatever they have listed there, or a nice brownstone in Brooklyn. And then he just has like different ideas for stuff. He's always creative with the content that he puts out there, but I have some of his books up there on the show. Yeah. I've always liked his stuff because it's different. Yeah. And he is a really engaging personality.
He's a good storyteller too.
Very good at it.
Let's story believes in that.
And that kind of stuff is like, that resonates. And it's a great way for people to get to know him without knowing him. But they feel like they do know him when they pick up the phone and call or shoot him an email like, hey, Ryan, we don't know each other, but I'm kind of looking for a place or we have a place that we'd be interested in selling. So and I don't think I'm as photogenic or camera friendly as Ryan is. So, I have a face for radio. And so I'm like, you know what, the podcast, that'll be a good starter for me. We're going to try that.
He taught me a technique too. He said, when you're looking at the camera and you're talking right into it, I used to see a million people on the other side and get super nervous. Yes. Right. Or even 1,000 people, right? Just, whoever, it's probably two, but exactly. Well, it makes me so nervous. Like I trip up my words and I'm like, I have to redo it. And it was taking 3 hours to do like 30 seconds. But he said, when you're looking at your camera, he said, look at your best friend and talk to your best friend. And that's how you build a relationship. And that's how people get to know you.
That's good advice.
And that's your comfort level, right? So when I'm talking to my best friend, I'm going to act differently and have different, posture and body style and everything else. And then what I'm like real life, right?
Yes,
and I'm like with my friends. And
it's not
do you
a
want to
front.
be my friend, right? Do you want to work with friends to go shopping for your house?
That's so cool. Yeah. That's great advice. Yeah. Back to some of the real estate stuff. Yeah. Are you seeing any trends that you're kind of watching closely, either as opportunities or red flags out there right now?
I'm always watching days on market and number of listings.
Yeah.
So watching the absorption rate, if you will. So, because I think that's a big tell as to where we are. And another technique I use is it's not so much watching, but it's making phone calls and finding out. So if I have a listing coming up this weekend that's in the 400 price point, it's a little single family house, who else has sold one of those in our county fairly recently in a similar area? I call that agent and I say, how many contracts did you get? Or how many showings did you get? How many people didn't get the house who are still out there? Yeah. That's how I base my pricing and my marketing around that information.
That's really thoughtful. Something that I don't know many people that do that, but that's a great way to figure out for your seller.
Giving all my secrets.
Here's what, it's great though.
That's what we do. We collaborate, right? And it makes us all better.
Exactly. So, but I think that's like another value add where you're going the extra mile, and for your seller, like I got to imagine they're probably like, oh shoot, we didn't know that. We heard that they had X number of offers, or, they had 20 showings, or it was so busy. And like, actually the agent said that they had like 5 showings and it wasn't, they ended up taking the first thing that came in. It wasn't, they thought they were going to get, some crazy number, but that's smart. Right. That's smart.
And something else I do is whenever we do get multiple offers in and the seller picks the one that they want, and then there's a bunch of people who didn't get it, right? And their hearts get broken and they've spent hours with their agent.
Of course.
So there's so many people, so many hours tied into this and emotions tied into that. I personally make a phone call to every single agent who put the offer together. And I say, hey, out of the 7 that came in, your buyer's offer was number 3 in the pile.
Yep.
Here's why. And I say, this is, it's like, please don't use this against me, but I want to give you feedback so you can better represent your buyer in the next one. So they understand why they didn't get it. But by doing that, I build a relationship with that agent, all 6 of them, right? And I say, I appreciate the time and effort that you put in. I know what that means. I've done that and not 1, 2. It's painful.
It hurts.
It hurts. I want to help you win next time, right? Without having to step on my client's toes, right? And then we always pick one as a backup contract too, because we don't want to go back on the market if the first one falls apart. We want to go to the next best one, because we can't reproduce that initial first impression that we had.
No.
So those are things. But what that does is when I submit an offer to another agent, how many agents do you think I now know and have good relationship with by doing that?
Probably a significant number.
A ton. And I teach classes and I do other things. So I want to be the person who's collaborative, that people know that about me. So that when it's down to me, I'm one of the top 2 offers for somebody else. And the agent says, you know what? I know this person's really going to get the deal done and get us through and be collaborative and a team-based player. If it's at all possible, she will be the one to do that. Versus another person who has a reputation for something completely opposite.
Right.
I want you, I'm going to steer you, not steering, right? But I suggest, my professional opinion is that this would be the more concrete offer to go with. And the other one, if they're apples to apples. Right?
1,000%. That's something that we talk about with our sellers. Like if we're lucky enough to have multiple offers and 2 offers are essentially identical,
right?
We're going to lean towards the person that I know that I have a good relationship with, that I have confidence is going to get you to the finish line,
right? So
that you can ultimately sell the house and get your goal and move on to whatever you're moving on to. If there's the unknown, or if it's 2 unknowns, so be it. But then you trust the seller to go with their gut on whatever decision they want to make. But that's something that I think you probably had a lot of influence on me with that starting out, more than you probably realize, is that like the collaborative nature of it. And like, I plan on doing this for a long time, and relationships do matter, and being able to have conversations, even when they're tough and you don't want to. And some agents don't take bad news very well.
Right.
But I feel like that's the right move. It's the right thing. And sometimes the right thing is the hard thing.
Right.
And it doesn't feel good. And that's better than somebody sending you a showing time notification. Like, all right, well, we went with another one. Thanks so much. It's like,
right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's frustrating. Tell me why, so that I can educate.
Right.
If I can't educate, then my people are going to be sitting there like, okay, cool. So what do we do next time?
Right.
Like, sometimes they know that they didn't put their best foot forward. Right. Not every time.
Different. Yeah.
But I want to be able to tell them, I can't tell you everything that they did, but this is what they went with. And here's where we could have improved on our offer if that was one that you guys wanted to go all in on.
Right.
And, this is the feedback from them. But that's so powerful. Do you think you're doing anything different today than you were maybe 2 or 3 years ago? Or focusing more on processes, or, more on relationships?
It's different from that.
Yeah.
I will tell you that, I think all agents who do a lot of business, you occasionally have a client who just, I don't know how to say this, but they suck the life out of you.
Yeah,
they just beat you down, and it's traumatic, right? And a lot of times it takes away from your future business because you're just emotionally battered from that. That thing that happened. And the more educated you get, the rarer that is.
Right.
But what really clicked and started making that completely different for me is, and you're going to think I'm maybe out there with this, but I will literally sit in my car before I meet either a seller or a buyer for the first time, and I will pray to God for protection. I'll say, if this is meant to be, if I'm supposed to, if I can represent them and this is part of your plan, then absolutely I'm all on board.
I'm in.
If I don't, I may not know why I lost this and beat myself up about it later, I'm not going to do that because I know it wasn't part of your plan. So it's having that pause and that intentionality of saying, I'm not going to win every one. And sometimes you don't know, and you do get upset. You're like, I thought I got that one, right?
Yeah.
but there may be something was going to happen that you don't know and you're being protected from, right?
Yeah.
It's the same with everything in life for me. It's very
That's
similar.
so true.
So that's been the latest game changer.
I like that a lot. And I feel like that probably gives you a lot more peace when you go in and out of these appointments or you know, these potential clients, to know not everything is in your control. Correct. And the chips are going to fall where they may, and I can put my best foot forward. And if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. That's a more healthy mindset than
trying to control everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, most agents are control freaks because we run our own business. And I was, you know, I talk to people in our office all the time. Like, real estate agents are difficult to deal with in many cases because it's usually a second, third, fourth career for a lot of people. And sometimes that's because of good reasons. Like, hey, I have a knack for this and I can go out and create my own business with my own client base and network and all that stuff. And then other times it's nobody else wants to work with me or hire me. So I'm going to go out on my own and do things and I have a schedule on my own time and blah, blah, blah. So it's sometimes it can be challenging, especially when the bar is low.
And one other faith-based thing that I've done too is when things go wonky and they're out of our control. Like we haven't done it, but it's affecting the transaction, everyone's emotions. And they look at you and sometimes people will get angry and direct their anger at you. I'm like, my response to that is, I'm so flattered that you think I'm God, but I'm not. But we're going to get through this, right? You got a good captain. We're going to land the plane. It's just a little bumpy, but just hang in there.
That's a good way to put it too. Because honestly, like we do catch the brunt of the frustration or stuff.
Sometimes.
And that's like, you know, part of that's our job is like, we're the face of it. And sometimes, you know, any transactions like the leg of a chair, you know, you got 4 legs on the chair. You need all of them to work in order for it to work out. If one of them slips, then the chair falls over. But the best thing you can do is pick yourself up, dust off. You're the chair, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. But you know, you have to be able to like, it's like a quarterback in football. You throw an interception, like sometimes it's going to be your fault. Most times it's probably not. It's probably got deflected or, you know, somebody else. Sometimes other people make a good play or sometimes it's just bad luck and it happens. Gonna dust it off, forget about it and move on. And
not meant to be.
Exactly. And that's just the way it is. But I like the faith-based stuff.
Thank you.
Have you always been faith-based?
No, I was baptized in 2017.
No kidding.
I was baptized as a child and then I walked away from God for 20 years. And then came back in 2017.
Where's your church?
I call 3 churches home right now. So Bay Area Community Church is where I got baptized. And I was pulled in through there's a nonprofit called Grace Bomb. And I heard about a Grace Bomb happen and that actually opened a door for me. And I went to Bay Area and sat in the back and the sermon series was The Evidence for Christ. So I went up to the pastor. His name is Pat Linnell, who runs Grace Bomb now, is no longer pastoring there, but doing Grace Bomb full time. And I said, you know, I got the Grace Bomb and I wanted to show up at church and hear you. And I said, I think I found my church home. I said, I've been away for 20 years and I think I'm home. And, you know, learned a ton and dove into the Bible. Like I'd never done that before and wound up getting baptized there. And since then, Lighthouse Church in Glen Burnie has become like a second home. And my third home where I go every Sunday, almost every Sunday, is my 94-year-old aunt. We moved her from Pennsylvania to Catonsville, Maryland, to a senior living facility called Charlestown Senior Living Facility. They have this gorgeous chapel. And I think that the only way that she agreed to go to this place was because of that chapel. She did not want to move. So my commitment, because she's got a little bit of memory issues, and to walk to church, she had to remember the hallways. They all look the same. That was going to be difficult. So my commitment by moving her was say, I will get you to church every Sunday, Auntie. That's what I'll do. So over the past 2.5 years, it'll be 3 years in August, that's what I've been doing, is going with her to the chapel, having brunch with her, and then coming home.
That's beautiful. So that's really cool.
I watched their sermons online. The other churches.
But no, that's so cool. I think I let too many excuses get in the way for me. And whether it's kids or work or whatever. but it is something that I feel like you can get a lot of strength from by having some accountability to a higher power, so whether it's God or whatever you believe in, I think that's awesome.
And I've never had anyone fire me by saying I'm not available Sunday mornings, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm going to church and they're like, okay, Sunday afternoon or or Saturday's fine,
That's nice. Yeah. That's nice. Let's talk about a deal that tested your skills. Do you have any super difficult ones that come to mind?
I have a current one. It's not so much difficult, but had I not had experiences in the past, I wouldn't know how to help this woman. So she's been going through back surgery after back surgery. She moved from Virginia to Maryland, and she lives in this waterfront house that's beautiful.
Yeah.
But to her, it's a prison. She moved from a farm to this to be close to Hopkins. So she can do all these surgeries.
Yep.
But her lifestyle changed. Her sociability changed. Even though there's water and it's peaceful and she looks out, to her, it's not. Right. So it's tied to that memory of pain and surgeries. So she's coming out of this, and she used to, again, on a farm, and she's super active and all these things. And she's about to get back to that after all that this is done. And, but her house has so much stuff in it, right? Yeah. Closets are full because the way she's soothed herself is to buy things while this is going on. So when I came over and she said, you're not the first agent that I worked with someone else before, and it wasn't clicking. I couldn't figure out how to do it. She said, I've got all this stuff. And she's like, I don't know how to move. I want to go to Charlottesville, Virginia. That's home to me. I have good friends there. I want to be there. And I looked around and I said, until you find the home that you're going to go to that you've chosen and you get excited about that, this is not going to happen. I just know from experience that this is an albatross sitting on top of you. Like, this is the world, and what is the guy's name?
Atlas.
Yes. You're Atlas with the world on your shoulders. And she said, you're right. And I said, so there's a vehicle that is perfect for someone in your position. And plus, I can't make the house pretty the way I need to get top dollar for you with everything in it.
Right.
And you're not in a condition to be able to figure out what you're going to use for the next house when you don't even know what the next house is.
Exactly.
She's like, you're right. I'm stuck. I said, yeah, this happens to everybody. You're not alone, especially to seniors. Yep. Like, you're not a senior, but this is where I get the skill set from. And I said, so that I'm going to have you talk to a bridge loan specialist. So what they can do is help you purchase the next home without you selling your current home, and gives you 6 months to bridge in between, sometimes 4, sometimes 6. But I said, your home is sellable, but if I try to sell it right now with all the stuff in it and without painting it and doing some things to improve the curb appeal, it's going to sell for probably 50 to 100 grand less than if I can clean it up. A bridge loan is going to cost you about 10 grand.
Yeah.
So this is an investment. It's not an expense. You have to look at it as investment. So you go find your home of choice, get excited about it, know what it is. Then we know what furniture is going to fit in your next place, what things are going to fit. We'll do a map for you because we can do that. Pulling someone to help us with that. We're going to help you pack, and we're going to get you there. That's going to cost probably another 10 grand, but we're going to be ahead. Have we not done this? So she is all excited now, and she's moving to Charlottesville. She's actively looking for her house down there, and it's going to take me longer. So again, I'm not worried about my paycheck, pay my mortgage, because I've got other business. So I can take the time with her to do this, and that's, a blessing. So as soon as she finds her house, we'll do the map. We'll figure out what she's taking. That makes it so much easier to figure out what to do with the rest.
So much easier.
Right? And then she can move, take the stuff she's taking, let me take care of the rest, get the house spruced up, get it on the market, and get her bridge loan paid off, and be ahead way more and she's not stuck anymore. Right? So I'm so thankful for having gone through some experiences in the past and learning about this through COVID, right? I had to get ingenuitive or get some ingenuity to do this. So anyway,
that's really, I mean, she's probably thinking you are her savior at this point, because you did all the stuff that most people wouldn't do.
I'm going to. Yeah.
But like, most people wouldn't be willing to have that hard conversation, and they would say, let's take the listing. We can probably do this, that, and the other. But she's not feeling good about it at that point, because she doesn't have the next spot to go to. It comes back to the motivation piece of it. And like, if she doesn't have anything to look forward to, and this is a drag on her, then she's going to be, ostrich with the head in the sand, kind of. And, that's really smart. you've had, you've had a lot of success in the Lux space. What's the most expensive piece of real estate that you've sold?
$3.5 million in the Downs last year.
Oh yeah. God, that house is awesome.
It was an awesome house.
It was an awesome house.
That was a big move too. And that took 2.5 years to come to fruition.
Oh my God.
So I handheld and walked through that too.
And it moved quickly.
It moved quick once we were able to get everything out, let me stage it, do all the marketing we needed to do. Yeah. And then it went fast. It went in one weekend where other luxury properties like that were sitting.
Oh, so, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. What's the most unusual client request that you've had?
Unusual client request. I want a house with a tennis court in the backyard.
Oh, yeah.
Budget is $800,000. Find it. I don't know. Yeah. That's
crazy. Have you had we've all had some wild showings. What's the craziest showing that you've ever had?
I don't know about showings, but I take pictures of crazy things I find in houses.
Uh-huh.
So my first picture that I decided to keep this little folder in my photos was I opened up a half bath, red walls, and there's a full size disco ball like right above the toilet. With I was like, what? Yeah. So there's that. I saw someone cover a refrigerator with contact paper that looked like a checkerboard thing. They're crazy things we find, right?
Oh yeah.
In homes. So I just like it's fun for me to keep this little album of entertainment.
It's very voyeuristic going into other people's houses and seeing how they live.
There's some things you can't unsee too, right?
Plenty of things.
Naked pictures of our toilets or of our bathtubs. I'm like, I didn't take that down.
Why is that up?
Right.
I remember one showing I went into. This place was in, and you might have seen this place.
Yeah.
This place was in Arundel on the Bay. This was, I think they've since redone this whole house. It's the wildest house I've ever seen. It was on the water. Mm-hmm. Which is what brought my people to it. They're like, we're looking for a project. It's on the water, which is great. Let's check out the inside. There's no pictures of the inside. Mm-hmm. You walked in. The kitchen was, I don't know, no bigger than this office. Probably half the size of this office, if we're being honest. For this entire place. This place was probably 4,000 square feet above grade.
They don't cook.
No.
They don't care about cooking.
It had about 6 different offices in there. It had shag rugs on the floor.
Groovy.
On the ceiling.
Wow.
And 8 hot tubs scattered throughout this place. And a gigantic indoor pool that was empty, thank God. Mm-hmm. Might have been like 12 feet deep. It was.
I did not see this house, and I'm glad that I didn't.
I'm telling you, it's the weird. And the ceiling height was like 7 feet. Uh-huh. It was the most bizarre house I have ever seen.
Yeah.
It was like, it wasn't even. There was no concept to this. It was like somebody kept adding on to this place. Maybe it was an office. Maybe it was some kind of weird. We thought like maybe it's just like some kind of weird sex dungeon den thing.
Like a swingers haven or something.
I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen so many hot tubs indoors. I've never seen more than 1 hot tub in a house. This one has 8.
Right.
It was the weirdest, grossest thing that I've ever seen. Somebody bought it. And I think it might have been a builder that was looking to like essentially tear it down and build new. But easily the strangest thing I've ever seen. And I've seen some other houses. I have like one set of clients who I love dearly who they love doing projects.
Yeah. And
anywhere around Annapolis, they're in Baltimore now and they renovated a place up there and they'll probably stay up there for the kids for the foreseeable future. But that they would try to target places that they're like, Shane, we need not only a place that needs work, it's got to have a creepy basement. I'm like, why is this? And they're like, for some reason we're attracted to and they're a young couple. They're like my age, but they're like, the place had bonus points if it had a room that was like, they would call it a murder room. They're like, this looks ultra creepy. I think we have to consider this. So let's factor in that murder room. That gave it at least another 5,000 for us.
Shane, you need to just sit in the car and pray for protection.
So that's like, I was like, guys, this is bizarre, man. What are we doing here? This house gives me the creeps. I'm not going into these basements anymore. Right. So forget about it. It's wild. So yeah, I've had some crazy showings and seen some bizarre stuff, but easily the one that takes the cake is the one in Arundel on the Bay. I'm just going to call it the swinger haven. It's totally weird. And I don't know if the neighbors are listening to this and you have stories, please message them in. Do you have any guilty pleasures?
Cheese.
Yes.
I'm a cheese.
Any kind.
Fanatic, any cheese. Like if you're like, what's your last meal? I'd be like, really good cheeses.
Cheese.
Maybe a little wine.
Cheese.
Yeah.
What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received? Can be real estate or life.
Okay. That's a good question. I think it would be, and this is something I learned fairly recently, is to love unconditionally, not conditionally.
Yeah.
To love and be loved in that way.
It's
the best advice.
That's great.
Because when it all boils down, it's all about love and relationships in the end.
If you weren't in real estate, what would you be doing?
I'd be a nonprofit world again.
Yeah?
Yeah. I serve on several boards and I do tons of volunteer work and support a lot of causes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I do. I leverage real estate so that I can continue to do that.
That's awesome.
Earn a good living, give back to the things I care about. So that's come to fruition.
That's really cool. One book, podcast, or film that you think every deal maker, whether they're an agent, entrepreneur, or whatever, should read, listen to, or watch?
The Carpenter by John Gordon.
Okay. You like it?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
How about where can people find you and they want to connect with you?
On all the social media platforms.
Yeah. Every single one of them. LinkedIn,
Instagram, and Facebook for sure. Those are the three that we hit the most. Working on YouTube. That's this year.
Yep.
So focus for that. Started to dive into TikTok, but because it's unstable, I decided not to pull back from that. And we have a website that we're redoing that will be out in about 2 months.
Okay. So. Is it still kn-team.com?
Yes, and it's still actively up there. It's just not it's the older version that will be soon to be updated.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Good. Any other final thoughts before we wrap?
Have you ever told your story of how you got into real estate?
Not on this podcast.
Would you like to?
I'm happy to. Yeah. I got time.
Okay, let's do it because I've always been curious.
So when I was in school, so I was at University of Maryland. Mm-hmm. I was in my junior year and I had a opportunity to take an internship. I was going to work for Discovery Channel because they were around College Park. They might be in like Adelphi or something like that.
Yeah.
And every internship on this college listserv was unpaid because this is 2009, 2010, maybe. So nobody's paying anything.
Right.
And then this one random post came up that was like paid internship on the listserv. So I was like, all right, well, obviously I have to apply to that. And it was for a government position and it was Department of Treasury. I was like, I know nothing about it, but fine.
Yeah.
And I ended up applying, going through a couple of interviews and ended up getting it. And they told me there was like 1,000 applicants or something for this. I'm assuming because it was the only paid one that popped up on this listserv. And they went with me and another gal who ended up becoming a good friend of mine, Jen Chen, who fellow Terp.
Nice.
And so they took us to, and it was the IRS of all places. And
we're like, no.
And I was like, oh, I didn't know this.
Death and taxes.
This is going to be interesting. Let's see how this goes. You know what? I'm at this point, I'm a beggar. I can't be a chooser. I need some money. So I was going to school, working this internship and getting paid, which was incredible. And going to classes and doing the lacrosse thing.
Yeah.
And so it was a pretty packed schedule. And I continued that through my senior year. And then when I graduated, they offered me the job full time. And I took it because I knew it and it was, paid, which was lovely.
Yes.
And B, like none of my other friends, like some of them way smarter than me and business school graduates and all this stuff, they couldn't find a job. Nobody was hiring. They wanted an entry-level position with 5 years of experience. And it's like, well, we just graduated, so how can we have that?
Right.
And so I took this job and stayed with it for maybe a year and a half. And sometime in 2013, I was like, I can't do this. Somebody made a comment to me at work one day. They're like, you are so smart. And I was like, lie, but thank you. And they're like, you're going to be running this place one day. And I remember like sitting in the Cube farm that was in the New Carrollton situation. And I was like, I just don't think that that's where I want to be in my life. I don't think I want to do that. And the government has like great work-life balance for most positions in government, not all.
Right.
And a ton of security and great benefits. And it's got its place. But I just, at that point, when somebody made that comment to me, I just said, I want to do something else with my life. And I don't know what it is, but I want to try while I'm young before it's too late to pick up something new. And so I put in my 2 weeks notice. I started without telling my wife. That did not go over well.
Oh gosh.
It was just something I felt strongly about. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know that I can't do this forever. And if I'm going to take the leap, I got to do it now.
Right.
And so I ended up starting a lacrosse club, and it was at first based around just training young lacrosse players.
Okay.
And it was something I started in like my mom's kitchen, basically.
Yeah.
And we started with 0 families, and just through, my contacts in the lacrosse space and my friends that were gracious enough to help me coach and run this thing, we ended up after like a year and a half with like 400 families working with us. And then we started club teams and taking kids to tournaments. And it's like, I'm not doing anything super different than what other clubs are doing. It's just how we did it was a little differently. And I tried to keep coaches young guys and not dads. It was a formula that on paper was genius. Executing it was very difficult when you're 23 and you're relying on other 20, 21, 22, 23-year-olds to show up on time and do the right things. So I probably ran that for 3 years before I closed the doors on it. And I had all these plans to like, we can run camps, we can do tournaments, we can do all this stuff. And that was kind of like getting my feet wet in the entrepreneurial world. And at the same time, I was like, well, I'm not making any money doing this, but that really wasn't my goal with it, was to make money. I've never been like, I want to live well, but I don't have this burning desire to be the richest guy alive or anything like that. So it was like, I took a personality test and they were like, well, with your marketing degree and with your, sort of business kind of background, maybe you should think about real estate. And so I met with a couple of different brokers, and Kathy Brooks is actually the person that got me into real estate. She was like, I think you'd be great at this. And I was like, okay. Then I was so naive, and I was like, so obviously I'm going to get my license and people are going to be lining up outside to list their homes with me and help me and, use me to buy their houses. And so I remember for the first like 3 months, I'm just sitting there on the computer and knocking out a bunch of social stuff like most people new in real estate do now. We're like showing houses today. And it just like, I was like, man, there is nobody that is like lining up to work with me. This is going to be tough, isn't it? I might have to like pivot here and actually get aggressive with reaching out to people. And this is, the end of back half 2013. And so I did like the door knocking thing and the cold call thing, and couldn't do that now. I think most people would be like, first off, unless you're Amazon or some kind of Uber Eats or whatever, do not come to my door. That's a no for me. But that's how I got started in it. It's totally different now. And I did it kind of on a whim, but I've always been like fascinated with architecture. Honestly, when I went to school, I went there to Maryland. Maryland's got a pretty cool architecture school and program. I wanted to do that, and it didn't align with the practice schedule that we had for lacrosse. And so coach was like, I mean, you can do it. You're just not going to be on the team. And I was like, well, hang on now. That's
lacrosse is more important.
I'm kind of majoring in lacrosse above all else here. I don't know how that's going to translate in life skills, but you know what? We'll figure this out. Yeah. I'll pivot. I'll find something else. And then I ended up landing on marketing because I could not get through the business school with like the accounting and the finance classes put me to sleep. Couldn't do them. They just did not speak to me. Some people have a very numbers oriented brain and they're like, this is just easy to me. It's just a ledger here and I can do what it was not for me. And so I was like, I'm going to the marketing school because I like that. I like, coming up with ideas and being creative. And so that's how I got into it. I honestly fell into it. It wasn't something that I had always thought about doing. I didn't grow up doing anything real estate related. My family wasn't in it, which, a lot of people that get into real estate, that's my mom or dad was in it, or my aunt or uncle or something like that. And it's just, for me, it's just something that, I don't know, it attracted me because I've always liked houses. I've always liked living here. And if I could, figure out the business side of it, I've always been pretty good with people and being customer facing and figuring out what's somebody's motivation and can I connect with them and can I find a way to get them something that they want. And so it just, I don't know. I'm sure I'd be a lot richer if I was more cutthroat. I can tell you that, but I'm not. I just, you would. I don't know. Maybe it would be for a short run.
It depends how you define richer too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. And so I've always been fascinated with properties and architecture and all that stuff, but I also love the marketing piece and the people facing element. Conversely, it's, the people also frustrate me the most. So it's a little give and take there, but
you're so good with people.
Well,
you really are.
Sometimes
I think your secret sauce too. Whether you think it or not, it's you. When you meet you automatically trust you, right? Like, I know you got my back. I know I can trust you. I know we're also going to have a good time as we're looking at houses or doing things. Yeah. So I think, all those they're important.
They are important. Yeah. They are important. It's not, I wish I was better at it, but that's like anything in life. I wish I was, a little bit better, but I try to learn and take bits and pieces from people like you. They're incredibly successful at this, and everybody's got a different path and a different background to it. And I have found over time, I enjoy learning people's stories, and then similar to you, just trying to connect them with other people that could benefit them.
That's great.
Yeah. So that's my story.
And you have a Ted Lasso leadership sign behind you.
I sure do. Yeah. Oh, we're a big Ted Lasso house. My wife has it on every other day. So
I love it too.
Yes. Well, Kristi, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for sharing your story.
We'll wrap the episode on this, and this was awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Special thanks to Kristi for coming on. That was an awesome conversation. We're thrilled that we were able to have her for this. If you guys want to connect with Kristi, check out the caption in here. We're going to drop all of her contact info. Follow her for updates on her business and on Northrop Realty in Annapolis. If you enjoyed the episode, hit subscribe, hit the bell, leave a review, and share it with someone who's building a real estate business with intention, or with somebody that would love to work with Kristi. If you're buying and selling in Maryland, especially in Annapolis, Kristi should be on your short list. She's an awesome agent and an even better person. So that's it. That's a wrap for the episode. And you know where to find us. Dealmakers out.